In this video, we're going to show you how to set up a new XG firewall out of the box. There are 5 simple steps we'll cover in detail. First, creating a Sophos ID. Then, starting your firewall and registering it. 3. Completing the setup wizard. 4. Confirming your firewall is operational. And finally, verifying and synchronizing your license. The first thing you'll need to do, if you haven't done so already, is set up your Sophos ID account. If you already have a Sophos ID account, you can skip ahead to the next part of this video. To set up a Sophos ID, visit sophos.com and click the icon in the top right part of the screen and select Create Sophos ID. Enter your first and last name and your business email address in the fields provided. Confirm you're not a robot and click Register. You will then receive a verification email at the email address you provided. If you don't see it right away, give it some time and check your junk mail folder in case your email provider inadvertently flagged it as spam. Click the link in the email to activate your account. Create a strong password and then log in using your new Sophos ID. Fill out the backup contact info if you like, save them, and then proceed to My Applications and select My Sophos. In My Sophos, select your profile and be sure to fill in the contact information fields here, including your company, country, and address. And then save the changes to complete your Sophos ID and My Sophos account setup. Once you have your Sophos ID, consult the Getting Started guide included with your XG appliance or download the latest guide at sophos.com/get-started-xg. You can either perform the setup and registration with the firewall connected to the internet on port 2, the default WAN interface, as we will demonstrate in this video, or you can leave it disconnected and perform the online registration setup later. A different video showing the setup process without an internet connection is linked in the description. At any rate, make sure your computer is connected on port 1 either directly or through a switch. Port 1 is the default LAN interface. On the computer you intend to set up your firewall with, enable DHCP to receive an IP address automatically from the firewall, or follow the instructions in the Getting Started guide for manual network settings if you prefer. In this case, I'm using DHCP. You can then power on the firewall and wait a few minutes for the system to start. You'll know it's almost ready when your IP address and network settings are assigned. Wait an additional minute or two for the device to finish starting up, and then you can access the admin console. The admin console is accessible by default via HTTPS at 172.16.16.16 on port 444. When you first connect to the firewall, you'll see the splash screen welcoming you to XG Firewall. From here, you can choose your desired language and then click to begin. The first step is to set your admin account password. You will be provided with guidance on the minimum password requirements and whether you meet them as you type. By default, the latest firmware will be automatically installed at the end of the setup process if you have an active internet connection at the time, ensuring you have the latest enhancements. You will need to agree to the Sophos license agreement or third-party license, and then you can click Continue. In the next step, you can rename your firewall if you want. The default name is the device serial number. Then select your time zone from the map, verify the settings, and click Continue. The next step is to register your firewall, which requires your Sophos ID and an active internet connection. Click Continue and you will be connected to the registration portal. Here you will either need to log in using your Sophos ID credentials we set up earlier, or you may already be logged in as I am here. Confirm you're not a robot and then click Continue. You will then be asked to confirm, and the process will finish by prompting you to synchronize your license with your firewall, which can take several seconds. Once the license is finished synchronizing, the basic setup process is complete, and you will see your license details displayed on the screen, including the subscriptions you've purchased and their expiry dates. There is also an option to opt in to the Customer Experience Improvement Program. At this point in the process, you can skip ahead to the end and finish setting up your firewall in the main console. Or you can continue using the wizard to help you set up some of the network and security essentials. Let's do that now by clicking Continue. This takes us to the network configuration screen. On my XG125W, I have 8 ports on the device. The first port is assigned to the LAN, the second to the Wide Area Network or WAN, and the other ports are enabled for the LAN also. Here you also select your gateway mode, where your firewall is either a gateway or inline or in bridge mode behind the main gateway. You can also change the LAN address and space and configure the DHCP lease range. There's also an option here to configure the device to run in Discover mode. You can accept the defaults here for now and make changes later in the main console if you prefer. In fact, any of the configuration performed in the wizard is easily adjusted or changed later in the main console. The next step only applies to models that include integrated wireless, such as my XG125W. Here you can define your wireless network SSID and passphrase, and then bridge your wireless network to the LAN if you so desire. There are also options here to enable and configure a second guest network if you want. I'll leave that for later. Next, you can assign some network protection policies to protect your network and users from intrusions, advanced threats, high-risk apps, unwanted websites, and more. These options are self-explanatory, and regardless of what you select here, all of these settings and policies can be adjusted in the main console later. Finally, enter your email address and server information for notifications and backups, and click Continue to review a summary of everything you have configured. If you want to change anything, you can step back through the wizard or change it later in the main console. You can also copy your configuration to the clipboard or send it as an email if you want a record of it, and then click Continue to have the settings apply, install the latest firmware if possible, and reboot the firewall, which can take several minutes. After completing the setup wizard and rebooting your firewall, the first thing you should do is verify that your firewall is operational. Log into the XG Firewall console using the LAN gateway address you specified in the wizard, which will be 172.16.16.16 on port 4444 if you kept it at the default as I did, and use the admin password you defined earlier in the setup wizard. Start by clicking the Interface widget on the Control Center to check the status of your interfaces. If you followed the setup wizard earlier in this video, port 1 should be connected to your LAN switch or computer, and port 2 should be connected to your wide area network or internet connection and be operating as the gateway, with the public IP address assigned by your ISP or retrieved via DHCP. Then go to the Firewall section and verify that the default rule you set up as part of the setup wizard process is present, accepting traffic flowing from any host on the LAN to any host on the wide area network. Then I suggest you open another tab in your browser and confirm you have access to the internet by visiting Sophos.com. If you are unable to access Sophos.com and have followed the steps in the setup wizard earlier in this video, the most likely cause is related to your internet connection, ISP provider, or DNS. Double check your internet connection interface on port 2 and then your DNS settings. Perhaps try temporarily changing them to another known good DNS server like Google's at 8.8.8.8. and test your internet access again. Next, we will check and synchronize the licensing. From the top right menu on the console, select About Product, or use the left navigation to select Administration. Either way, you will end up on the Licensing tab, which provides details on your device registration and your protection module subscription licenses. While your firewall will synchronize licensing periodically on its own, you may need to click Synchronize to see any recent changes reflected here. If you purchased a Total Protect or Enterprise Protect bundle, as I have in this instance, the subscriptions should show here as subscribed with the correct expiry date after synchronizing the license. Your firewall is now operational and licensed and ready for you to apply some of the great protection and controls XG Firewall has to offer.